Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Getting Started with SAP Signavio. So, I am Melody, and I'm a business transformation consultant at Flexo. I've been working with Flexo for exactly 2 years and 9 months now, and during that period, I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of fun projects, especially focusing on process analysis and process mining. And therefore, also a lot of Signavio. So I will be guiding you into the world of Signavio today. So, are you ready to kickstart your journey with me? Because today on the agenda, I will be covering some introduction on business transformation at Flexo. Then I will explain to you what is SAP Signavio. I will go through the process transformation suite, which is actually the total package that Signavio offers. And then we will go into a deep dive of two modules. First of all, Process Manager, and second of all, Process Insights. Afterwards, there will be time for some Q&A, so please feel free to put your questions in the chat and I will have a look at it afterwards. All right, so at Flexo, we look at business transformation from a holistic point of view based on the PPT framework. PPT stands for People, Processes, and Technology. Because we believe that there is no transformation without any of these three elements, so at Flexo, we try to find an effective balance. And in order to do so, Signavio comes in the picture because it helps us to coordinate how these elements support each other, and it also helps us how to create synergy where these components can enhance the others, because Signavio also focuses on these three elements. The people are the ones executing the processes, and in order to do so, they also have to use technology. And Signavio sheds light on these three elements together, and I will show you how. But first, what is SAP Signavio? For the people that are new to the topic, I will try to explain it in just one picture. So here we see a man that is probably walking home from a long day and he's taking a shortcut. So we also see that there are some paths designed to use to go straight ahead or to turn right, but this man chose a shortcut, and apparently a lot of people already have done that before him as well, because the grass just disappeared. And actually, Signavio is trying to do the same for your system and your processes. You want to get an overview of what is exactly happening today, because maybe you have a very well-developed system, but if people are not using it as designed, then maybe it's not as efficient as you thought it would be. So Signavio can help you understand what is happening and what are people doing. Are they taking shortcuts? Yes or no? Whether you want to start on a process level or on a data-driven level, both are possible with the Signavio modules. The goal is to capture your areas of improvement. So let's have a look at the process transformation suite. As I already mentioned, this is the full package that Signavio offers you. So it contains a lot of modules. To be precise, these modules are in this package. And on the outside, we see that there are also value accelerators. And these value accelerators contain best practice diagrams from SAP, KPIs that you can use, and other accelerators, so you never have to start from scratch with Signavio. The goal of the full process transformation suite is to align across your entire organization, to reduce time to insight, as you will not start from scratch, and to bring experience and process excellence together. So let's go through these models. On the left-hand side, we have two modules for analysis and mining. We have process intelligence on the one hand and process insights on the other hand. They both have the goal to locate and prioritize improvement potential in your systems and in your processes. They can focus on quick wins, meaning that you already make some fixes in your system today, but also to focus on long-term transformation, to make a plan on which capabilities that you want to include later on in your new system, maybe. The biggest difference between process intelligence and process insights is that process insights is only for SAP users, meaning you have to be already using SAP in a standard way to be able to use process insights. However, process intelligence is way broader than that. And you can also connect to other databases with process intelligence. So both options are available here. Let's move on to process and journey modeling. Therefore, there are also two modules that Signavio provides. On the one hand, we have Process Manager. On the other hand, we have the Journey Modeler. The biggest difference here is that the Journey Modeler actually focuses on customer journeys only, meaning how to find which touch points your customers have with your company, how are they feeling during each step of the process that they're going through. While Process Manager, on the other hand, is a very broad module to capture, document, and simulate any type of process. Whether it is an SAP process or another process, you can really capture it all. Both also use the value accelerators and the best practices that SAP provides. So again, you don't have to start from scratch. And they're system agnostic, as mentioned, so you can use it even if you are not yet on SAP. And then on the right-hand side, we have two modules. These are more for when you are further in your transformation process, because these are really about building workflows, building approval flows, and automating your processes. So you already have to know what kind of processes you will be using and how efficient they are today in order for them to be automated, of course. So process governance is a module that focuses on building these workflows, these approval flows, and is really to manage and drive process management related tasks. It's also very human-centric, so there's a lot of collaboration in that module as well. And then on the other hand, process automation has RPA capabilities, meaning that you can actually build low-code or no-code applications also to automate your process. As you can see, process automation is actually part of SAP Build, so it's not directly Signavio, but it's very much synchronized with Signavio. And then last but not least, in the center, we have the Collaboration Hub. And as the word says itself, collaboration, it's your single source of truth. And this is also the place where you get to involve the business. Literally anyone who has a stake in any type of process that is happening in your organization can collaborate, can provide feedback, and can really be involved from the start of your transformation process. Of course, you can create different audiences and have some authorization settings so that you don't have to share everything with everyone. So this is really the place where everything comes together. Whether you are using Process Insights, Process Manager, Process Governance, you can all link it back into the Collaboration Hub so that you can share it with your full organization. All right, so now that we had an overview, let's dive into the Process Manager and the Collaboration Hub and see what it can actually offer you. So who is the target audience? Well, the target audience to use or to get started with Process Manager would be mostly organizations that want to capture and document their processes. So why would you want to do that? Probably because you are growing very fast and you want to innovate, you want to adopt new technologies. Then it's important to know what you're actually doing in your organization, who is doing what. So with Process Manager, you could easily map your as-is processes with your to-be processes to actually make that comparison and make it very visible to everyone in the organization. And organizations that want to define clear roles and responsibilities also benefit from using Process Manager, because sometimes organizations know what they are doing, but they don't have a clear view on who is doing what exactly and how the departments correlate with each other. Process Manager can also help you with that. And Collaboration Hub is, of course, synchronized with Process Manager and is there to share it with everyone in the organization. Now, what does it actually offer you? I will go through a list of questions that can be answered by using Process Manager. For example, how can we document our business processes in an efficient way? Because we know there's a lot of modeling tools out there, but you don't want to spend hours and hours on the layout of your processes, of course. And how do we make sure we keep this one single source of truth for the whole organization? I already told you part of the answer, of course, with Collaboration Hub, but let's see how that actually works in practice. I will go into the system now, and I will show you the BPMN elements, so the modeling languages that are available, the built-in checks that Signavio has made for you, and the version control, which is also a very efficient functionality. So here we see the process manager environment. On the left-hand side, you see that it is actually based on a folder structure. Of course, this is a demo environment, so it doesn't look that good, but if you would use it for your organization, you could actually represent your organizational hierarchy based on these folder structures. Let's say we want to do a new model and we want to use the BPMN language. You see, we have a lot of options of modeling languages. You could also model enterprise architecture or decision diagrams, but for today, we will keep it with BPMN. Then we enter into our editor. And on the left-hand side, you have all the elements available for you. So you can just start and drag and drop whatever you need. Let's say today we are company X, and we work for the sales department, and we want to draw a process on how we receive a sales order. Then we can just drag and drop it here. And we want to label it, of course, so that it's clear for everyone what is happening. So let's say we received an order from our customer. Notice how I can now use the shortcut menu, which is very efficient and very convenient because I don't have to go drag and drop every element anymore. I can just select here that I want to add a task. For example, create sales order. And then, of course, we want to send an invoice to our customer as well. And that is how you draw a process model. This is a very simplified version, of course, but you can already tell that it's very easy to add elements. And an extra functionality I personally really like is that you can just use this button to move around everything. So let's say you forgot to add an activity. You can just make your diagram bigger or smaller and add the missing activities. So this is how we drew a process model, but Signavio also offers you the possibility to add some attributes. On the right-hand side, we have the attributes panel, and here you can see that you can actually add more information on your diagram without having to put it visibly on this panel here, because it would become, of course, way too chaotic if we would add all these little text and all these extra information. So therefore, we can use attributes. Signavio offers the possibility to create your own custom attributes. For example, if you would like to add a transaction code in which you would create a sales order, or maybe you want to add some risks and controls on each activity for you to do reporting on. Signavio also has main attributes in which you can, for example, select a task type to just indicate, okay, this is a task that requires a user to log into the system. All kinds of things you can add here in the attributes panel. Also execution times, execution costs per activity. That's all possible with the attributes panel. So that is really nice to have here. Let's now just save our process. Then you will see that Signavio has a built-in check to verify if your model is actually compliant with the BPMN rules and if it makes sense. Because sometimes you're busy with a very complex process and then actually you have some illogical steps there. So Signavio will do a check for you. You can also choose which checks are done at every save. And this is a very good way to make sure that your models are actually correct. So we could choose review here, and then you have an overview. So let's say, for example, I was drawing my process and I totally forgot to label this element, which does not make sense because no one knows what is happening here right now. If I would refresh, Signavio would tell me, this is an error. You need to label your element. You cannot save it like this. As you can see, you can actually not go wrong with Signavio here, because even if you don't really know the BPMN rules, it will tell you what to do. It will also give you warnings and hints to make your process even better. So now we have created a new process. Let's check how we can do that version control. On the bottom of our screen, we have an activity feed in which we can see per process who has changed elements or who has done something with your process and on what time. If I would click on a certain revision, let's go back a little bit. Let's select revision 5. Then you can see, okay, somebody in revision 5 has changed this activity here. I can also do a lot of other activities with my version here. I could probably restore it. If I want to restore it, I can just click here, and that will become the last up-to-date version. So as you can see here, all the activities that have been done on these processes are all stored in a historical overview, so you never lose any information, even if you are constantly changing your model, and even if a lot of people are working on these models, you can always just go back to a previous version without losing any other information. All right, so let's go back to the slides to the next questions, because Signavio offers a lot of other things for you with the process manager. It also answers the question, how do we reflect our process hierarchy? Because in organizations, processes are not always on the same level. You have a lot of sub-processes that you also need to be able to capture. Or how do we make sure we capture all variants? Because sometimes if you're an international company, you have processes for Europe, you may have processes for the USA or for Asia, and you want to capture these differences. No problem, Process Manager also has got you covered here. And an important one as well, how can we compare the as-is situation with the to-be? Well, let's have a look at that in the system as well. So we will be looking at process hierarchy, variant management, and the comparison tool. So, for example, I have prepared a small diagram here. This will be my main level diagram. Just a simple process, also receiving an order and then processing the order and sending an invoice to the customer. But here we see prepare goods for shipping has this little symbol here. That is because I created a sub-process for these tasks. Because prepare goods for shipping, it entails a lot of other activities, but I don't want to put them all here in this diagram because it would become way too chaotic. If I would click on that, I can easily just navigate into my sub-process, see what is in there, and if I would like to edit it, I can just go and open it in another window. So that is how you can easily build sub-processes in Signavio. Also, very interesting, as I mentioned, the folder structure. Let's say our main process and our sub-process would be in another folder, which is perfectly possible. You could still very easily navigate back into the main diagram here, linked by, or into the sub-process via the column linked diagrams. So you never lose track of all the sub-processes that are there. That is for process hierarchy. We also want to look at variant management, of course. So I created a variant here. This is a variant on my main level process. It's actually on the same level, but I wanted to add an extra task in here. For example, determine delivery priority. Maybe in some of our affiliates, we want to have this option, and in some other affiliates, it's not relevant. So I created a variant here. And if we go into the attributes panel, there you will see that Signavio has a variant management section, which actually captures which variants are there and what is our process template, meaning our main process from which we copied into variants. The creation of these variant groups is happening in the Collaboration Hub. I will not go into detail on that, but know that the functionality is there to create several variants, so you don't have to go and draw each diagram from scratch. You just make a copy, you name it, and then you create a variant group. All right, so we had process hierarchy and variant management. Now I would also like to show how you can compare diagrams, because that's also an important question that we had. So we can go from here, from the editor, into our diagram comparison tool. This will open two diagrams next to each other. In this case, I'm comparing my variant with another revision of my variant, so with another version. But you could easily change the diagrams here and compare any diagram with each other. So I could easily create an as-is situation and a to-be situation and then put them next to each other. So this way you can see, for example, if we compare left with right, that on the right-hand side, I've added some activities. Even if another person would have added these activities, the view would be the same. So anyone could actually compare these diagrams. You can also filter here on the bottom screen if you want to only see elements that have been changed or only things that have been deleted, stuff like that. You can just really play around and make this comparison. All right. So Let's go to the next questions, because we're not done yet with Process Manager, as it has a lot of functionalities. It can also offer you an answer to questions such as, how can we test different scenarios? Because sometimes you really want to make estimations about processes before you decide what your to-be situation should look like. Also, how can we get more insights from our documented processes? Because it's nice to capture everything and to have it all documented and to put it in our folder structure, but maybe we want to just have, a click on the button and see some reporting on our diagrams to really get insights about them. Luckily, there's also a solution for that, so we will have a look at simulation and at the reporting functionality in Process Manager. So, let's say I take a very simple diagram here, and we want to do a simulation on this one. Then I can go to the simulation functionality here. And what is happening here is that we want to build scenarios. And these scenarios consist of different elements. For example, in this case, we have 3 activities. It's a sub-process, but it doesn't matter. You can simulate any diagram. We want to add the costs per activity. Picking goods costs our organization €4, for example. Then you can also add execution times of these activities. You can add a frequency. For example, we assume that this process from Monday to Friday is happening overall 20 times. And you can add resources. In this case, we only have 1 swim lane, so we assume that 1 person is doing these activities. But if you were having a lot of swim lanes, a lot of departments, you could add the work schedules of all these persons and the costs per hour. And that way, you create multiple scenarios. And if we run the simulation, Signavio will tell you what is the total cost of your process, what is the total cycle time, what is the resource consumption, and what are the bottlenecks. In this case, we don't have any bottlenecks because we don't have waiting times and we don't have other persons working on the same process. If you were adding a lot of lanes and 1 person has 20 tasks and the other one only has 3, Signavio would probably tell you this is a bottleneck. You can export the simulation into an Excel file, or you could simply click on it and do the analysis within Signavio to have a more detailed overview. So this is a really nice functionality to answer questions such as, okay, we want to transform. What would happen if we would add a new resource? Or what would happen if we would, remove a couple of activities? How many costs would we save? What would happen to our cycle time and things like that? So this is a tool that can answer these questions for you. And then we also have the reporting functionality, of course. So from any diagram or from multiple diagrams, you can select the reporting option and run some standard reports. Note that, of course, if you add a lot of attribute values, as shown previously, where you can add more information about your diagram, your reports will become much richer and much more interesting. So if you don't add any attribute values, the report will be very simple. But you do have this functionality to run reports. And then the last part of questions, now we will focus on the Collaboration Hub, because of course I focused on Process Manager a lot, but Collaboration Hub is also there for us. This can answer questions such as, how can we collaborate with relevant stakeholders? What if they don't have a user? Because, you can imagine that not everyone in the organization would have a Signavio user or would even have the time to log in and go to the diagrams. And how can we prevent people from viewing certain content? Because we might not want everything to be shared with everyone. So in the Collaboration Hub, we have 3 functionalities: publish, share, and comment that can help us with that. So this is the Collaboration Hub. You see, it kind of looks similar to the Process Manager. We have the same folder structure here, in which we have our shared documents folder. So everything is synchronized. Everything I do as a modeler in Process Manager is synchronized into the Process Collaboration Hub. A very important difference here is that you can switch views. So me as a modeler, I have the option to go into preview or to the published view. And publishing means we share it with everyone who has a hub license. A hub license is a read-only license. So for people who are not actively involved in process modeling, but do need to see the diagrams and everything of documentation that has been created. So that is a big difference. If you would go to published, I would not see all these diagrams because they are not published yet. They are only in a draft version. So let's say that we want to publish something. We have to go into our Explorer as a modeler and decide to share it to the wider public. Then we have here the sharing option and publish to Collaboration Hub. Now, I hear you thinking, yeah, if I want to share my finance process that I've had modeled with my CFO, my CFO doesn't have the time to make a user in Signavio and log in and go to the diagram and then give his feedback. He will not do that. No worries, because there's also the option to invite anyone for feedback. And if I would invite anyone for feedback, I just put in the email address and a standard message like this, or you can do another message, of course. You could create your own message and then send it to him. And I have an example here for you. So if I would be the CFO, I would receive this email with a link. And if I click on this link, I would be redirected into a window just separately. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to sign in into Signavio. I just get this window and I can comment on anything here in this diagram. So I would be able to comment on a task or on the full diagram here. And if I put a comment here, if I put a comment here, for example, new comment, and I submit it in this window, then you would see in the process manager that this comment also has appeared. So there's a direct synchronization. If I go into this process, I can check my comments, and I see this comment. So this would be the comment of the CFO, for example. If I go into the Collaboration Hub, I would also see this comment here in this commenting panel. So literally anyone who is working with Signavio and anyone outside of Signavio can collaborate on diagrams and can provide their feedback. And that is how you can involve the business. Yes, so what does it offer you? If we make a summary of Process Manager and Collaboration Hub, it's user-friendly environments. As you can see, it's very intuitive to work with. You don't have to have a lot of knowledge upfront. Efficient collaboration, because we can invite anyone for feedback. We can model together with colleagues, and we can even have external stakeholders providing their feedback, so we can remodel our processes. And smart decision-making, because we can do simulation and we can run reports, we can compare diagrams, so a lot of functionality that actually helps you to reduce your time to insight. Let's move on to process insights. Who is a target for process insights? So as mentioned before in the overview, process insights is really there for analysis and mining. And here, in this case, you can investigate and drill down into SAP process data. So organizations that already have a clear view on what they are doing, but they're not sure if they are working efficiently and if their data is being used completely in their system, they can go with process insights and investigate and drill down into their data. They can also already execute quick fixes, because process insights will give you recommendations on how to fix your system immediately. Small things like data cleansing and things like that. I will show you that later on as well. Or process insights is also a very good starting point for organizations that are ready to prepare for long-term SAP transformation. So, what does it offer you? It could offer you answer to questions like, how do we identify bottlenecks in our processes? What actions can we take to solve these bottlenecks? And how do we prioritize these actions? Because probably there will be a list of like 100 actions that I can do per process, but how do I know which one to do first? Process insights will also help you answer these questions. Important to mention, process insights is only for SAP users, and preferably organizations that are working with a standard version of SAP. If you have a heavily customized system, it is still possible to use process insights, but the insights will probably be more limited than people or organizations that are using the standard version of SAP. However, it is a very limited setup time, and once you get the scan from SAP, because SAP will scan your data from your system, after 24 hours you can start mining and you can start doing your analysis. So which functionalities are there in Process Insights? We have process flows. Those are your process flows based on your data in your system. We have performance indicators provided by SAP. We have a monetary value analysis, so we can not only see what are the bottlenecks in terms of objects that are going through our system, but also what is the value of all these objects with bottlenecks and how much can we save, for example, within 1 year. We also have corrective and innovative recommendations. Corrective recommendations are short-term, innovative recommendations are long-term. And afterwards, there's also a section transformation plan. If you really don't know where to start, Signavio will also guide you in that and makes a summary of all the actions that you should be taking in your system. So let's have a look at how this works. Process Insights is a module that you really have to go through from start to end. So you don't just pick functionalities. It's best to just go through the whole analysis. And there are a lot of entry points to do so. You could start from end-to-end processes, or you could select one department and zoom into those processes. It all depends, but it's the same data, the same analysis that you can make. So let's say we want to investigate the source-to-pay processes. Then we will get an overview of everything that we are executing within that source-to-pay process. So if I would be choosing here one process, for example, the process of converting a requisition into a purchase order, then I can drill down into the details of that process. So what we see here is on the top, we can see how many items are concerned, about 9,000 items here in this case. You see how many blockers SAP already identified for you. You see a completion rate, which is only 59% in this case, so that's not that good. You see the days to completion that it takes to go from a requisition into a purchase order. And you can actually compare it to the industry benchmark. Because SAP has so many years of experience and has gathered so many data, they can actually tell you, compared to your competitors in the market, how are you performing. What it also does is gather improvement opportunities for you. So you don't only see the blockers, you immediately see which opportunities that are linked to that and which steps that you can take for those opportunities to be realized. And you also have the option to show the monetary value. So as mentioned, you don't only look at how many items are concerned, but you can also look at, what is the value of these items? Is this really a big blocker, or is it just a small portion of what we are realizing? So per process step, these items here in the blue bars, these are my process steps. My first step is purchase requisition items created. My next step is purchase order items created. Per step, SAP will indicate which blockers there are. So here we see blockers. Everything that is indicated in red is an actual blocker. Everything that is marked in green means, that's okay. You can continue the way you're working. And everything that is in blue means, okay, this is not a blocker. It is just being tracked for your information. So let's investigate a blocker here. For example, purchase requisitions that were converted manually. If we drill down into that, we can do internal benchmarks as well. Because, for instance, it could be that these purchase requisitions are only being converted manually for one material type, but not for the others. Or maybe we want to compare between purchasing organizations. Who is doing more manual work? All such things you can actually analyze here with these company benchmarks. Another option, which is also really interesting, because this is a scan of your SAP data, you can really drill down and see about which documents we are talking. You see the purchase requisitions here. So it's about 1,230 items affected. SAP will provide you the list of these 1,230 items, and you can actually see who created this requisition, why was it converted manually, what is it about, and things like that. So you can really do a root cause analysis on everything that is mentioned here within this blocker. On the other hand, we have the value analysis, which is just another starting point. if you are very much into the financial part, you can just go and see the value analysis that SAP has provided for you. So based on your data, they will also make a summary and some calculations on performance indicators that you can look at to save costs or to increase revenue. In this case, for example, we see the recurring value, and we also see the one-time value. You see what you have realized and what is your potential. So in this case, we see that there's a lot more potential, meaning that if I would drill down into these performance indicators, for example, I want to increase productivity, and then I see one of these performance indicators is the number of changes in purchase orders. In this case, if we would lower the number of changes in purchase orders, we could actually save 50K in 1 year. So think about that. That is actually just your return on investment. If you invest in this process insight scan, you can get a lot of value back within the same year. So that is a really powerful tool here. Next, we're not finished yet with process insights. We have the corrective and innovative recommendations. So you don't only get insights into your data, you also see recommendations that SAP has provided for you, because sometimes it can be hard to know where to start. So if we have a look at the correction recommendations, you will see a list, and you also see the impact and the effort of each recommendation. And this is how you can easily prioritize, because if it's a high impact and a low effort, why wait? You can just do it today and fix your system. Let's say we want to mark purchase requisition items for deletion, but we don't know how to do that. If we click on it, SAP will also provide you a step-by-step guide. Of course, this is for the standard SAP. It might be that for your system it's a little different. However, it can still be a guideline to fix your system today. On the other hand, we have the innovation recommendations. These are actually long-term steps that you can take. So it's not something that you fix in your system today, but it's something that SAP recommends you to do or to have a look at least, because it can be relevant for your processes. For example, in this case, you see the relevance here in the middle. So if it's very relevant for you, you might want to start thinking to add this capability into your system in the future. You also see which blockers are related to that and the number of blockers, which again can help you prioritize, and you see which end-to-end processes are linked to it. If you would click on such a recommendation, you would be guided into helpful SAP documentation. As it is a long-term plan, you cannot execute it immediately, but you will find the relevant documentation to get started on these transformation steps. Now, I know this is a lot to look at, it's a lot of information, and if you don't know where to get started from all these entry points that we have, no worries, because there's also a section transformation plan, in which Process Insights just really makes a summary of all the steps that you should be doing, or you should at least be looking at. For example, here on the left-hand side, we have processes to analyze. If I would click on that, I see an overview of all the processes that we are doing in our system, and they're matched with the best practices from SAP. So in this case, you know exactly which processes you should be looking at first. So as a summary, Process Insights, what does it offer you? Quick insights, of course, a root cause analysis on your own data, and a step-by-step guide for transformation. So in order to go to the conclusion, I have only one thing to say to you. Get started today with Signavio. Either you need to map and design your processes, you can get started with Process Manager and Collaboration Hub. You want to analyze and optimize your processes because you already know what you're doing, that's fine, get started with Process Insights. And if you're not sure what your organization needs yet, feel free to contact us at info@flexel.com or via our website, and you can book a full demo session to go into all the other functionalities that Signavio provides. And this brings us to our Q&A. So I'm happy to answer the questions. Yes, so a question I see here is, Is this compatible with HCM or SuccessFactors? The answer is yes. So you can integrate Signavio with other platforms, SAP platforms or non-SAP platforms. So that's perfectly possible. Of course, it depends on the module that you want to be using, but most of the modules are compatible with all of these platforms. Let's see if there are other questions. So I see there's another question here. Can Signavio or Process Insights be linked with S4 setup, implementation, or testing, especially when you mention improvements? So again, the answer is yes. For Process Insights, it might be interesting to do it before you start a transformation, but it can also be interesting to do it once you are already on S4HANA, for example, because Process Insights can be used as a continuously monitoring tool. So you can not only start with it to have a clear view on, okay, what should we be doing in the future? You can also use it afterwards to see the system that we have designed and developed, is it really used as we have designed it? And are we going the right track? So you can use it at any time for ECC, for S4, and for other SAP platforms as well. Another question, can we hide confidential steps in a process, those that require approval, for example, and indicate of whom? Well, what you can do here is within one diagram, you cannot hide steps. You can, however, indicate authorization rights, and if you want to share it to external stakeholders, you do have the option to create a simplified view in Signavio. So if you would be sharing it with an external party, yes, you have the option to remove some steps. If it's to be shared with internal users, so for example, with everyone who has a hub license for Signavio, you cannot hide one step in a process, or you would have to use a workaround, like make a variant that you can share with this group, and then the other variant, which contains all the steps, to be shared with another group. So there are definitely workarounds to solve this question, but it's not like you have one button where you can just hide activities depending on groups. All right, then a next question. Would you recommend Signavio for small companies or only for bigger, more complex organizations? That is a good question. I would say for smaller companies that are growing really fast, Signavio can also be very helpful, especially Process Insights, because they are just getting started with their transformation and they really need to see what is happening today and where do we want to go in the future. If we're talking about bigger companies, of course, I would also recommend to use Signavio. They can really handle the full process transformation suite. So yes, it's actually for both types of companies. Of course, if you're only with 10 persons within your organization, it might be too early for you to use Signavio. But if you're growing very fast and you want to make a transformation, it's definitely also for the smaller companies. And then the next question, is this a tool for IT to play? Business processes are to be defined by functionals. It's actually a tool that can be used by both IT people and by functionals, because you also have the option, I showed the BPMN language, but you can also model enterprise architecture. So if you really want to focus on your system landscape and you want to capture processes and systems and how it should be looking like in the future, the IT team could actually also be working with Signavio. On the other hand, if it's about operational business processes, then we would use the BPMN diagrams for the more functional people. But it can be both. You can actually use it throughout the whole organization. Is Signavio an SAP acquisition or an internal development integrated with previous SAP applications like S4? Is it replacing Solman? That's a good question. Signavio is actually an acquisition, so it was another company before, but it is not replacing Solman because, the functionality of Solman is more being replaced now with Cloud ALM, in which you can track everything about your project, your requirements, your testing. Signavio is really more a tool to focus on the process modeling and the data within your processes. So it's not about requirements for your project and things like that. However, there is an integration between Signavio and Cloud ALM, which is the new Solman. So in that way, it is really interconnected. Another question, each step of a process should indicate who does what, where, how, when, and why. It depends on how you want to model your processes, and it is actually up to the modeler to decide which type of information that you want to add in your processes. Of course, you should indicate what is happening in this process step. You should be indicating who is doing that. But not necessarily where it is happening or how and why. That is up to you, how complex you want to create these process models. Okay, so I think we're through these questions. Then there's only one thing for me to say. I would like to thank you all for joining. I hope you had an interesting session, and if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us. We can give you a full demo or tailored advice. So yeah, let's get started with Signavio. Thank you.